If your father ever stood behind you at a mirror, or knelt beside you at the curb with a busted tire, or handed you something sharp and said, "Watch me first," then this one is for you. This is 20 forgotten things that fathers in 1950s America taught their children, quietly, one Saturday at a time, before the world decided a man's hands had nothing left to teach that a screen couldn't teach faster. You are going to hear one phrase more than once tonight, because it is the whole point of the list. He never called it a lesson. He just said, "Come here and watch this." Keep that phrase close. It comes back. Hit that subscribe button, because what you are about to remember might explain more about the man who raised you than you have ever put into words. The villain in this story does not wear a face. It is convenience. It is the instruction manual, and after that, the how-to video. And after that, the app that does the thing for you, so nobody ever has to be shown. Somewhere in the last 70 years, a father's slow, patient hands got replaced by a screen that never asks you to sit still and watch. Let us count down the 20 things fathers hoped their children would carry before the world found a way to carry it for them. This is number 20. Learning to shave with a safety razor. In the 1950s, a boy did not learn this from a box. He learned it standing at his father's elbow in front of a steamed bathroom mirror, watching a badger brush work-up lather in a mug, watching a Gillette double-edged blade tilted at an angle that took years to find by feel. The famous super-speed razor, the kind with the twist-to-open handle, was in millions of American bathrooms by the middle of the decade. And a father would run the blade down his own jaw first, slow, so a son could see the exact angle before ever holding one himself. You remember the sting of aftershave on a nick you didn't feel until it hit. That whole quiet ritual is mostly gone now. By the 1970s, the disposable cartridge razor had arrived and taken the mirror lesson with it. Nobody has to be taught an angle anymore. You just throw the old one away and clip on a new one. Number 19 is checking the oil and the water before a long drive. The hood up, the dipstick pulled and wiped on a rag and read again. A father explaining what the color meant without ever quite finishing the sentence, because he assumed you'd get there. You remember the smell of a hot engine on a summer morning, faintly of gasoline and rubber. Now a dashboard light comes on and tells you nothing except that something, somewhere, needs a mechanic. Number 18 is rolling into a full service station and knowing exactly how to behave. A hose across the driveway rang a bell inside, and out came uniformed attendants, sometimes 3 or 4 of them, to fill the tank, wash the windshield, check the tires, and top off the oil, all before the driver had barely put the car in park. A father taught a child to watch this whole choreography and to have a coin or two ready for the attendant's hand. That kind of service began fading through the 1960s and was mostly gone after the fuel crisis of the 1970s, when self-service pumps took over for good. Now you stand alone in the cold, swiping a card, and nobody checks anything at all. Number 17 is changing a flat tire on the side of the road. The jack cranked by hand, the lug wrench worked loose before the car ever left the ground. The nuts tightened afterward in a star pattern so the wheel wouldn't wobble at speed. A father let his child do the work with his hands hovering close, but not touching. You remember the grit of a spare tire against your palms, heavier than it looked. Now it's a phone call and a weight on the shoulder for someone else's hands. Number 16 is a firm handshake and a look in the eye. Not bone-crushing, not limp, just steady. The web of your thumb meeting the web of his. A father would test it, sometimes on purpose, and correct it without embarrassing you. You remember the strange formality of being handed that gesture like it was something valuable, because it was. It meant you were being counted as someone worth greeting properly. Now, a nod does the same job, if anything does. Number 15 is tying a proper necktie. A father standing behind his son at the mirror, reaching around him so the motion could be copied rather than just watched, looping and tucking slow enough for small hands to follow along a beat behind. You remember getting it wrong 9 times before your fingers finally understood what your eyes had seen. School and church required it then, in a way almost nothing does now, and the ritual mostly went with the requirement. Number 14 is sharpening and folding a pocket knife safely. Boys were often trusted with a small blade well before their teens, and fathers who cared taught the same rule the Boy Scouts of America built a whole safety program around. Stretch your arm out, turn in a circle, and if you can't touch anyone, it's safe to open the blade. Close it away from your palm, always. You remember the particular pride of a first knife, its weight in a pocket like a badge of trust. It's a rule almost nobody teaches anymore, because almost nobody hands a child a knife anymore. Number 13 is the idea that a handshake was the whole contract. No lawyer, no paperwork, just a grip and a word. And the understanding that breaking it meant something worse than any penalty a court could hand down. A father would point out quietly when a neighbor had done exactly what he said he would, no more explanation needed. That kind of trust between strangers has mostly been replaced by fine print. Number 12 is depositing allowance into a passbook savings account. A child would carry coins to the counter, hand over the little booklet, and watch a teller stamp a new number into it. The deposit and the interest both printed right there in ink for anyone to see. A father used that small stamped number to explain, better than any lecture could, that money left alone quietly grows. You remember the weight of that booklet in your pocket. Proof of something building slowly. Now a balance updates itself on a screen, and there is nothing physical left to hold. Number 11 is taking the broken thing to the man on Main Street instead of the trash can. Every town of any size had a shoe repair shop, a watch repair man, a man who fixed radios and then televisions, because appliances back then were built to be opened up and mended rather than replaced. The Maytag repairman became a kind of national joke precisely because the appliances of that era so rarely needed him. A father would carry a broken toaster or a busted radio down the street rather than to the curb, and a child would watch a stranger take something apart and put it back together, working. That habit faded as goods got cheaper to replace than to repair, and most of those little repair shops closed along with it. He never called it a lesson. He just said, "Come here and watch this." 10 more to go. Number 10 is a paper route before sunrise, a canvas bag heavy across the shoulders, a bicycle in the cold dark, folding papers tight enough to throw onto a porch from the sidewalk. On Fridays or Saturdays, a boy went door to door collecting what was owed, learning to keep a ledger of who had paid and who hadn't. Fathers who woke their sons for these routes were teaching, without saying so, that money is earned before it's spent. You remember the particular quiet of a street before anyone else is awake on it. Child labor laws, changing economics, and the decline of the printed paper itself have mostly erased that first job from American childhood. Number 9 is fixing a leaky faucet or changing a fuse. A father would open a toolbox on the kitchen floor and hand a child the flashlight, narrating almost nothing, letting the work itself be the explanation. You remember the particular smell of an old toolbox, oil and metal and dust? It was ordinary competence, the kind that meant you didn't call anyone for the small things. Most of that has been handed off now to a service call and a stranger's van in the driveway. Number 8 is tipping a hat and standing when someone older walked into a room. Small physical courtesies performed without being asked, done so often they became reflex rather than manners. A father modeled these more than he explained them, correcting a slouch or a forgotten nod with a look instead of a lecture. You remember being told to stand and not knowing quite why it mattered, only that it clearly did to him. Number 7 is writing a proper thank you note. Practiced cursive at a kitchen table, a stamp licked and pressed on with a thumb, a folded letter carried to the mailbox at the end of the block. A father who insisted on this was teaching patience as much as gratitude, since a letter took days to arrive and days more to be answered. Now a text takes 4 seconds and rarely says as much. Number 6 is learning to drive a manual transmission. The exact point where the clutch caught, taught entirely by feel, a father's hand resting near the shifter but not on it, letting the car stall out again and again until the lesson finally landed in the muscles instead of the mind. You remember the lurch, the stall, the small, furious pride of the first smooth start. Automatic transmissions took most of that particular lesson away. Number 5 is folding a paper road map back along its own creases. The glove box atlas pulled out before any trip, a father's finger tracing a route out loud while a child leaned over to watch, and the small triumph of folding the whole thing back the way it came without tearing it. Now a calm voice from a phone tells you where to turn, and nobody has to trace anything with a finger again. Number 4 is building something with scrap wood in the garage. Sawdust drifting across a workbench. A hand plane pressed into a board slow enough for a child to feel the resistance under it. A father saying almost nothing except easy, easy. Let the tool do the work. You remember the smell of fresh-cut pine, sharp and almost sweet. Flat pack furniture and an Allen key have mostly replaced the workshop itself. Number 3 is tying a knot that would actually hold. A taut line hitch on a tent rope, practiced by firelight until fingers could do it without eyes. A father retying a sloppy attempt without a word of criticism, just showing it again. You remember the particular satisfaction of a knot that didn't slip when you pulled on it. Almost nothing in daily life requires that kind of knot anymore. Number 2 is standing up when an older person entered the room, or giving up a seat without being asked. Reflex, not performance, worn into a child through repetition rather than instruction. A father who lived it himself rarely had to say much about it at all. Number 1 is sitting beside you while you did it wrong and showing you, without saying very much, how to do it right. Not any single skill on this list, but the shape underneath every one of them. A father's whole curriculum, delivered an hour at a time, never announced as teaching. He never called it a lesson. He just said, "Come here and watch this." None of these 20 things mattered much on their own. A knot doesn't matter. A necktie doesn't matter. A folded roadmap doesn't matter. What mattered was the unhurried hour spent earning each one beside someone who cared enough to slow all the way down for you. That is the thing a tutorial video cannot give back, no matter how clearly it explains the steps. We traded the front porch for the search bar, and we got something faster in return. But faster was never really what any of this was about. That refrain keeps its weight for a reason. He never called it a lesson. He just said, "Come here and watch this." It is worth sitting with because it says something bigger than any one skill on this list. It says that someone thought you were worth the time. If you had a father or a grandfather or any steady hand who taught you something this way, you are not foolish for missing it. The world you grew up learning in was real, and it was good, even with all its rough edges. And it deserves to be remembered as more than just old-fashioned. So before you go, tell us in the comments, what is the thing your father taught you without ever once calling it a lesson?